Have you ever wanted to know about writing seasonal picture books? Stick around while I talk to Scott Casperson about his fantastic story and his fabulous out-of-the-box marketing ideas.
Welcome to the Writer's Way podcast, where we celebrate writers who have completed their books and inspire writers who haven't. Join Lori and her guests as they talk about writing, books, and life in between chapters.
Hello, writers. Thank you for coming back to the Writer's Way podcast. I'm here with the wonderful Scott Casperson. Welcome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on with me. Why don't we start with, I see your beautiful book in the background, but tell us about you. Tell us about Scott and how you got started.
We'll focus on me right now. Hello, my name is Scott. I am a first-time author, now 3 years past being able to say that I'm new to the scene, but I got into writing because I had too many stories inside my head that finally needed to get out. I am based in Los Angeles, which is a relatively very creative city. I made my way here after many years in advertising, not on the creative side, on the account management side of things, selling, making a lot of pitches, that kind of stuff. Did come out here to be a writer and an entertainer. Had mildly amounts of success, depending upon who you ask in my family.
Your mom says you did great.
She did, yes, absolutely, 100%. My father, rightfully so. Along the way, I took a job teaching, which I'm sure many children's picture books authors have gone this path as well. I was lucky enough to be able to take a gig going overseas and trying my hand as a teacher over in Japan. And I was very lucky to work for a corporation that actually gave teachers a lot of autonomy in the class. So you had your basic curriculum, and then you just kind of went from there, and you added or took away as you saw fit. Well, I tended to add quite a lot because I felt the curriculum was a little lacking. So one particular year, I decided to create a game based upon the vocabulary words that we were trying to teach the children at that time. And so we had lots of fantastic words for Christmas that the Japanese kids were picking up on rather quickly. But they didn't have candy canes over in Japan. Now, it's not that the concept of candy is that alien to anybody around the world, but this particular piece of traditional holiday fare was not to be found. So in the story that I created, the central character was all about a candy cane. And 8 years later, after creating that story, I kind of kept thinking about it over and over again. I had dabbled in some other stories, sent out to publishers, but I had never done anything with that one. And basically, that's kind of how it got started. Was just basically coming up with something for the classroom, for the kids.
And then you decided to pursue it. And how long has it been published for?
It came out in 2016.
Okay, so a couple of years, and you have paperback and hardcover.
Mm-hmm.
Have you enjoyed the process?
Sometimes, yes. It's just when you think you have figured it out, you're like, aha, this is exactly the route I need to go in order to be able to get this story out in front of the masses. It doesn't seem to work out as you imagine it to. And that's been a disappointing thing about doing this on my own. I do have professional distribution through Baker & Taylor.
Okay.
But in terms of actually anybody out there on the road pushing this thing, publishers or agents, it's not. It's all on me.
Yeah.
So which can be invigorating because it's up to you to kind of make it happen. And so you kind of always are trying to think creatively about, okay, where else can I get this story in front of eyeballs? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure probably I could have saved a lot of time if I had joined some organizations or gone to seminars. I just never really kind of went that route. I kind of stubbornly would put an hour or two every night into my own little research efforts. Mm-hmm. And I thought I discovered some really wonderful routes. They just didn't always pan out. Some did, some mostly they didn't. So
you have to try, right? You have to try all the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you find your, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say just working independently. It is very freeing. You don't have anybody to account for your successes or your failures except yourself. So it's I don't know. It's kind of interesting to be able to kind of wake up and just wonder where you're going to go today with your story.
Love it. Ups and downs for sure, right?
All the time. Yes.
We can be our own worst critics, so our own worst boss.
Aren't we? Yes, I know. It's very true.
I was going to ask how you found your illustrator, because that's always an issue for people.
Yes. Well, this particular one I stumbled upon because she happened to be a student of mine. So when I came back to the States, I started doing adult education at night, ESL, English as a second language.
Okay.
And was walking around the classroom one night, and a woman was not doing what she was supposed to be doing. She was flipping through her pad and showing off her artwork to another classmate. And it just hit me about how her style of drawing really kind of fit with this particular story. Now, I had been sending out other manuscripts to other publishers, and you wait your 3 to 4 months and get kindly passed on. But I had never done anything with this one. And so after a couple of years of just, I don't know, nothing was happening with the other stories I had, I just kind of felt like, I got to do something. So I asked her if she might be interested in collaborating with me on this particular project that I had in mind. I let her read the story. She seemed to like the story. And we just kind of went from there. So it was very kind of serendipitously how it just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really looking to do anything at that time. I had actually dabbled with exploring production of the story while I was overseas. And I had met a woman who was an artist. She did some fantastic sketches of the book. However, she couldn't take those sketches to the next level. So unfortunately, there was no, when it came to the ink and the art and the coloring, it didn't really match with the quality that I was looking for. So I had to drop it. And it's actually a blessing because the story did change 8 years later. I did kind of look at it and kind of fiddle with this and that.
Mm-hmm.
As probably any author would tell you, just shelve it and come back later and look at it and go, oh my gosh, what? So, so I met this gal and she and I kind of did it together.
Did she finish your course, or did she spend the rest of the time drawing? I don't remember.
Well, I only taught one of her classes. I think she did go on to complete the whole program. I don't know.
Good for her.
I'm sure I was a big distraction for her.
Yeah, she's a job now. I was talking with an author just on message today, and we were talking about how books need to percolate. So exactly like you say, and sometimes it's 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, and sometimes it's just a month, but some books really do need, and then they are so much better for it. So I'm glad that worked out well for you. You shared a whole list of titles. So how are these coming out? And I'm particularly interested in the Pictureless Picture Book.
Okay, that one, unfortunately, that one's been shelved, as we were just talking about a moment ago. Yeah, it's a really creative endeavor. The people that I got it in front of couldn't quite follow where I was going with this. So like, it's really good, but I'm not sure what age category you're going with this, going for on this. So that was one of those things where I'm like, I'm gonna have to revisit it. It's pretty. If I had to do a comparison, it's almost like a Shel Silverstein's Where the Sidewalk Ends. It's all these individual kind of like poetic kind of like adventures. But again, yeah, I'm not sure what that one's going to happen. That one's, but there are other ones that have come to the forefront now.
Okay.
I've got 2 right now that actually we're in the final stages of illustration, and they're with art director. One is called Room for One More. Thank you. It's called Room for One More, and that's being illustrated by a very talented gentleman up in Canada by the name of Noel Toison. And I found him through the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, that one here in Los Angeles. Really, really, really great guy. And we've just been communicating over line. He's been sending me his sketches, and I've been making minor tweaks. I'm really excited about that one.
Canadians are fabulous.
Okay,
we're all fantastic. Yeah. Sorry.
And then the other one I'm working on, the working title right now is In the Dark. And I have to cheat on this one because I'm not, I wish I could say I was one of these multi-talented authors / illustrators who could do everything, and I can't. I know what I want. I know the style that I'm craving with the picture, or with the story itself. But I started to think, well, could I create a story where I could actually do the drawings? And so I created this idea of just telling stories through a pair of eyes in the dark, and how expressive they could communicate the idea that was happening as a young boy makes his way through his house at night to grab a glass of water. Well, I got the drafting table all set up, and I got the tracing paper, and I printed out copies of eyes and all that kind of stuff, and I just sat there for 2 nights straight, and
Eyes are hard.
Anything's hard when it comes to illustrating if you don't have the guts to try. And unfortunately, I have to admit, I failed. I used to want to be an illustrator when I was a child. And in fact, I really thought that was the route I was going to go. So the fact that I just was like, no, I'm going to leave this to the professionals. And so I found this young lady. She's in London. Her name is Nicolette Timor. Timor, excuse me. And I basically just said, look, I've seen your portfolio. I like what you're doing. Would you be willing to take the story on? So I'm much more happier letting someone else take that responsibility. And once again, she's creating some great stuff. So like I said, right now it's called In the Dark. We'll see what the final published title is.
Oh, that's exciting. That one sounds really neat. You can tell a lot just from eyes.
Yeah. It's silly. That one, I mean, obviously my Candy Cane one, How the Candy Cane Got Its Stripes, does have an uplifting tale about self-discovery and growth.
Okay.
Room for One More is really, that one also I wrote now 8 years ago. That one's all about just finding the power to be able to help others from right within your own house. And that's a very timely story here in Los Angeles. But that one, I mean, that's got a little message behind it. This other one, In the Dark, is just kind of a silly adventure. I think it's funny. It can be.
There's space for all of it, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And kids love that. So if you're gearing it to, 3 to 5-year-olds, 4 to 8-year-olds, like they love that and they'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have to hit him over the head with them.
No, you don't need
oral story. Yeah.
I now you might have lots of advice to share with new authors, but I liked what you wrote to me because it's so true. So I don't know if you remember it. Do you want me to read it to you?
Was that don't put it off, but don't wait too long?
Well, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I'll tag that with something else.
Okay.
That kind of came to me today when I was getting ready for this. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm, the hairline might give it away, but I'm not a youngin' anymore.
Relative.
And yeah, right. And obviously you need experience to be able to tell good stories. And I have to say that I'm a little bit of a Peter Pan individual, because I do not think that I've grown up very well or at the pace that I probably should have. So I tend to think of things in a much more creative, kind of lighthearted way. But at the same time, as much as I was dabbling in other forms of entertainment, whether it was comedy or sketch writing or whatever, there were always stories inside me that I wanted to get out. And the process of actually putting out a book, especially an illustrated book, can be a somewhat daunting task when you look at not only the timeline involved, but also the expenses involved, in the production and all that kind of stuff. But the lucky thing about the world we live in now is there's so many people you can get involved. If you don't know how to do something, there are people out there who can, and do it at a very professional level. This illustrator that I mentioned before, Jihoon Kim, very, very talented young lady. Not only did she help me with the drawings, but she also was the one that actually did the art direction and oversaw production of the book and everything. And right down to, I'm just going to point this out too.
Sure.
I thought she did a really great job with even the spine. Like, she took into account like how this thing would look on the shelf.
That's cool.
And I thought, even when I go into the stores now, and it just stands out. So I would never have thought about that. So there are people out there who really can help you. And I think that my delay was all because I got caught up in, I wouldn't say the minutia, but the technicality of becoming an author on your own, an independent author. But at the same time,
did you have trouble making the decisions? Because you have to make all the decisions. So which way is right? Because there really isn't always a right or wrong.
Yeah, I guess also, I won't say that I overthink things, but I do know that I kind of going back to what you mentioned before in the beginning about self-doubt. I guess I always worried that I can make a strong decision on one thing, but then I would wait. I'd find out later that it wasn't the best. So when it comes to just the production side of things, like I said, the drawing, of course, which is so important, right down to overseeing just the print and the check, the proof sheets and all that kind of stuff, having someone oversee that for you, just handing that off, because the time it takes to educate yourself and educate yourself properly, I felt like I was just get it done, just do it. Because otherwise I'm going to use that as an excuse of like, oh no, I'm still studying. I've got a couple more books that I'm reading that I checked out from the library about pre-production. No, I'm not. So just let somebody else do it. And that's where, as much as I would say do it, do make sure though you have a good team behind you, and that you're not jumping into something way before you really have a full bearing of what to expect. That's right. It. And the other thing I was thinking about today was my background in marketing and advertising kind of was a good and a bad thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I tended to put a lot of money into my materials going right out of the gate. I really thought you need to have a Barnes & Noble corner display worthy setup. When you haven't made your first dollar back, you kind of dig yourself into a hole. Now, the good thing I will say about all those materials that I created, they're going to last me. So, for example, I have a children's book festival event happening in Orange County, the first weekend of October. So all those things that I've been using for the last couple book festivals, I'm just going to cart them with me, and I'm going to unfold them. And then, again, everything gets laid out, and it looks really well done.
Right.
But I probably could have broken it down into like, this year I'll do this, this year I'll do this. Instead, I would just like, wah, right out of the start. So that's the only thing I would say is just maybe you can manage your marketing materials, spread it out a little bit.
Well, there's no direct ROI that you can say, I put this much out for the sign, and this is how much I got back for the sign, but it does help.
No.
Yeah.
As long as it lasts.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line when you're in this business, I find. How much money to put out, how much thinking to do, how much time to take, before you just say, screw it, and get it out there.
Right.
There's a lot to be said for just getting it out there, learning the hard way. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that advice. What was the most surprising thing, would you say, that you've learned?
Well, I guess positively, I've been lucky. My particular tale, the one that's out currently. Obviously, I knew when I was creating the story that I would have the seasonality behind me. I could go back to stores in every October, November, and December, and I would be somewhat guaranteed some shelf space.
Okay.
If you put a book out that you're hoping or has a relevant year-round tale, you're lucky if you get that shelf space for those 12 months. But at least I get to revisit these people every year. But the one interesting thing that I discovered last year was one of my failures was that I thought for sure that I had a set market when I stumbled upon the fact that there were Christmas stores open 365 days a year, actually maybe 364 days, maybe they're closed Christmas. But they're open like all the time, and that's all they do is sell Christmas stuff. That's it.
Yeah.
And there are like 18 of these things around the United States. And I was like, well, okay, so I might not be able to have shelf space at Skylight Books here in Los Angeles, but for maybe 2.5, 3 months a year, these other stores can carry my stuff 12 months a year. No, I found out the hard way that just when you think you have found your niche, it doesn't always work out that way, because probably half the stores I contacted were religious based only. My
Oh,
story is not a religious story. And the other ones were like, we just don't carry books. They just don't do very well. So we're basically Christmas ornaments and ugly sweaters. So
oh,
I got one in Missouri.
and how do they sell?
It said okay. They sold okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming back around. So I get to contact them again, see if they want to order some more. So I'm hoping so. But
And then,
that was one of those things where I really thought for sure I discovered the Holy Grail.
yes.
But what did end up coming into my favor, and I would say this to anybody who has a book, is consider alternative options for product placement based upon what your story is about. Yes, we all want to get into bookstores. However, in bookstores, you have to share a lot of shelf space. So you have to fight a lot of competition, right? Because my story is a candy story, there are stores that carried last year and will continue to carry this year that basically they have warm, handmade candy canes for the year. And so therefore, my book with their product ended up selling quite a lot. So that was kind of a neat little way to kind of consider breaking through the clutter,
Yeah.
is consider other alternative places. If you write a book about dogs, consider where you take yours to have it groomed. That store might very well offer you a little shelf space.
Yeah.
These kind of ideas. It doesn't always have to be a bookstore that carries your product.
Oh, that's great
Uh,
advice.
Be a gift shop at a hospital if you think it's a relevant lesson about
Yeah.
overcoming some kind of serious injury or abnormality or whatever it may be. There's other places for you to be able to rack up sales, not just bookstores themselves.
Oh, that's great advice. So I have to ask, would you try your hand at another seasonal book based on your experiences over the past few years with this one?
No.
No.
Well, I'll tell you, because this one, it came to me as it kind of had a personal side to the story itself. I don't get a chance to make it back east for the holidays. And so when I wrote this book originally, I was already far, far away from friends and family. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the story is really about finding your worth to others. And so when you after you're done reading the story, there's no real mention of family. It's really about the relationship between people, whether they're friends or neighbors or loved ones. And so I kind of wanted to take a little bit of that. You have to have that family opening presents around the Christmas tree in front of a crackling fire idea away from it.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has that. I mean, you have a lot of single parent families. You have a lot of latchkey, or not latchkey. I forget what the terminology is. Kids that are shared between parents.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that idea.
Definitely.
Those poor people. And again, that's so common now. And so the idea of a husband, a loving husband and a loving wife together to be that mom and that dad, it's not always necessarily reality anymore.
Right.
So this story kind of came from a personal place for myself as well. I just don't have that connection with any other ideas, holiday-based ideas, I guess.
Right.
My other stories that I've come up with, like for example, a Room for One More, was because I was crashed on a buddy's couch for 4 months. I told him I'd only be a week. I was looking for a new apartment. I couldn't find a new apartment, and without any hesitation whatsoever, from day one to 120.
Yeah.
He never gave me skunk eye when he saw me in the morning. It was always like, "Hey, how'd you sleep? Everything going on?" And he just couldn't have been any nicer to me. And I knew I was imposing on him, but it was that kindness that I felt was like, oh, this is an interesting idea that so many people might need just that helping hand, a little boost.
Absolutely. In one way or another, an actual room or just in their space in their life. I love that. So your books really have a deep meaning for you.
Kind of, yeah. They come from somewhere personal. I'm trying to think where the personal one is, what the personal story is for In the Dark.
I was just thinking that. Did you have some trauma when you were a child, maybe? No, you know, it's like all kids do that. My kids go through periods when they're 3, they're not scared to go anywhere in the dark. And when they're 4, all of a sudden, they know about monsters and they know that something might be there. I mean,
Wow.
or they think. So I think it's very universal, that fear of the dark. And I don't know in your story where it will take the child, where it will take the boy, but sounds interesting.
Yeah, he has an overactive imagination. As he keeps coming upon new members of the family in the house, his first instinct is that they are some kind of wild animal. Until at the end, there's a little bit of a twist. I won't tell her what it is. You have to read it. But it's funny because actually when I've gone after the holidays are over, I'll go back to the store and they always ask like, well, what else do you have? Do you have another holiday book? How the Easter egg got its stripes or something? I'm like, no, it's got to come from somewhere true.
It'll percolate for 8 years and then
exactly, yes.
For every season. Well, I'm always curious about seasonal books because it does seem like your marketability time is short.
It is, yes.
So curious about how people handle that. But I love your idea of candy stores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, candy stores, toy stores are always good as well to try, especially independent ones. Obviously, they're looking for opportunities. I mean, especially if it's, you know, they may not be able to give it to you for the year, but especially, yeah, you have to put a little bit of, you know, thought and creativity into your presentation as well. Come up with a reason why that store should carry it, not just because you're a first-time author and you've got an amazing product to sell them. You've got to make that pitch. You know, tell them that, you know, the month of July is, National Dog Month or something, yeah. You know, and again, if that has relevance to your story, then give them a reason for a limited time to not only carry it, but also promote it. Yeah. That's the other thing too. And you may have to come up with some kind of signage. You may have to create some kind of, you know, whatever little mini bio thing that you can put into a frame that'll go next to your story. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, any store will support you if you're supporting your product. Because when a customer walks in, whether they walk up to that register with a Paddington Bear under their arm or your book, I mean, either way, it's a sale for that store, and the store is going to be just as happy to be able to sell either product. So.
See, this is where your marketing background comes in so well, because I betcha most first-time authors are not going in with a pitch. And yeah, you know, this idea of the month and tie it into something else. I think that's terrific.
Yeah, just don't spend a lot of money on your pitch. It's really all about the idea. Just come up with a good idea, and as long as you have a solid product to give them that represents not only yourself but the store, then they at least should give you the time of day to consider it.
Right, like fewer reasons to say no. Yes.
True.
Okay, so thank you. Where can people find you and find your book?
Well, this particular book that's out now, you can go to the candycanestory.com. You can also write me directly at the candycane at gmail. The candycanestory@gmail.com.
Okay.
See, I made things so simple that I've forgotten them. So yeah, so the website's the same as the email, except at gmail.com.
Okay.
And then of course Amazon. It's always there. And then the other 2 books, hopefully when they're out, unfortunately we're not gonna make the holidays, but we'll make the first part of the year. I'll probably end up transferring some, or at least adding some links to the one website to start to grow, and start to promote the other 2 products.
Well, best of luck with those 2. Maybe you should come back on in 6 months and we can talk about how they ended up and
I'll tell you how everything
non-seasonal books are going.
Well, God, 6 months. It had to be longer than that, honestly, because realistically, you think about it right now, we have 3-4 months left to the end of the year. Yeah. Once my book gets out at the beginning of the year, I mean, we're probably not looking until almost a year from now, July-ish, to be able to say whether or not things are going as progressed or not. So.
How they're doing.
So if you'll remember me in 12 months, I'll be more than happy to come on and talk to you.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Hope you go check out Scott's book in time for the holidays. And thank you again.
Thank you very much, Laura. I appreciate all that you're doing.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Thanks for listening today, writers. If you have questions you'd like answered on one of the upcoming episodes about seasonal books, either send me a message or comment on the videos so I'll see it. If you have experiences yourself with children's seasonal books, I'd love to hear about them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you're a newly published author trying to figure out Amazon, have a look at my site, creativewriter.com, for the course opening in October. It's a 4-week intensive program where we will master metadata, book descriptions, and more. Thank you for subscribing to the Writer's Way podcast. Just like with book reviews, it helps to boost the visibility, which allows me to help more writers. See you next week here on the Writer's Way podcast.
You've been listening to the Writer's Way podcast. For show notes, links to guests' information, and to learn more about the Writer's Way, check out LoriWriter.com. Until next week, enjoy this chapter of your life.